Shaun Haney here with RealAgriculture.com and Real Ag Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. We've been hearing about some of the real brutal situations with the crop in the Okanagan Valley due to some very, very adverse cold weather events that happened there in January. Here to talk about the farm business risk management side of that. Where are some of the gaps? What needs to be done is AJ Gill. He's Director of Agriculture Risk Management Resources with MNP, and he's based in Kelowna. AJ, great to chat with you.
Shaun, thank you so much for the opportunity to have me on your show. Yeah, we've had, since COVID, we've had a number of events that have taken place. Like we've had the heat dome and we've had the frost. We had a frost in December 2022. We've had the smoke issues from all the fires. And then, the last black swan event that took place was in January of 2024, which had a huge impact on tree plants, tree fruit side of things, but also a big impact on the wineries and the vineyards. So I'm hearing as much as 70 to 80% damage, bud damage on the cherry side of things, and similar on the wineries and the vineyard side of things.
And when we talk about the Okanagan Valley, it's highly specialized. Land costs are significantly more expensive than they are, say, in Saskatchewan or even the best corn ground in southwestern Ontario. $150,000 per acre plus, or in that vicinity. Obviously, there is some variance there. This is a major issue, as you described. So, are there risk management programs in place to support some of these farmers in the Okanagan Valley?
Yeah, so there's a number of government programs that are in place to help in situations like this. The phenomena that we've been having here is there's been a number of years. Like I said, we were impacted through COVID. Then we had the heat dome 2 years in a row. And then we had the frost, and now we had another freeze in January. So the impacts have been huge. And like you said, these are like once you have planted, tree fruits, be it cherries or be it vineyard, you're committed for the next 20, 25 years. So it's not something that they can pivot very quickly on it. So this is, these people are there and they're committed to this, and they have to figure out a way how they get out of it. So one of the things that we at MNP work closely with our guys is, we have something called an ARMP, an Ag Risk Management Projector, where we look into situations like this. We would plan it out throughout the year for them using both private and government insurance programs and say, if things do go sideways, if a situation like this arises when you lose 20, 30, 40, or 100% of your production, or you've had an impact on your prices, due to geopolitical issues, or you've had issues like we're having with weather or natural disasters, what is the impact is going to be, and what is these programs, how they're going to work, and how they're going to help you out. Most of these programs are designed to work hand in hand. Crop insurance and AgriRecovery work hand in hand, and we'll look at and see what the gaps that are going to be left through this. Like when we plan these risk management strategies for our clients, we will look at, this is what you have, your fixed cost, this is your, variable cost, and this is what you need to sustain yourself, and this is how much the programs are going to come and help you out. And this is a gap that's going to be left, which is going to be impacting your bottom line, your balance sheet. That's how you're going to have to come up with that. So usually when somebody has a plan like that in place and they know what they're dealing with, and it's a little bit easier for them to kind of plan and deal with it. If you don't have a proper risk management plan in place, it becomes very hard, especially when you have high fixed costs due to the high prices of land and some of the input costs that go into carrying these trees. Like if you've had what we've had, there would be some savings of they can cut back on some of the expenses, but they still need to maintain and take care of those trees. So expenses are going to be there, and the high cost of borrowing and the interest rate increases and all that hasn't helped in this situation either.
Now, you mentioned agri-stability. Does AgriRecovery at all help in this situation?
You know, we have been waiting to hear back on if there would be an agri-recovery in this situation. So agri-recovery is not a program in itself, it's a framework. And the framework gets triggered when you have extraordinary expenses that would come out. Like we've seen agri-recovery triggered in Ontario when they had the frost issue, because they looked at what is covered to the crop insurance, what's covered to the agri-stability, and they definitely figured out that there's a gap. And there was, I believe it wasn't a big agri-recovery, it was $10–12 million agri-recovery that was triggered out in Ontario. So we know that the province of BC that has been tackling this issue and working with associations and working with the farmers directly, and I think they were looking into it, and they were reviewing if there's a gap with what would be coming out through once they have crop insurance triggers in for pulling the trees and replanting, because there was a 50+% damage to the lines, so those needs to be replanted, and then what's the impact that's going to come out of there. So those are some of the things that where AgriStability can help for a year or two, but then there might be some other losses that they need to figure out how they're going to make sure that these wineries and vineyards can sustain themselves.
Yeah, and obviously BC is very, very proud of its wine industry, and one of the complicating factors here is that it's to just do a comparison. It's when we have a drought situation on the prairies, it's a 1 year thing, right? You had a loss on your lentils, your wheat, or your canola, and you try to live to fight another day, and next year is a new opportunity. In this situation, if you have a problem with your vines in your vineyard and you have to do some sort of a replant, this is not a next year revenue opportunity. This is a multi-year staging, 4 to 7 years before you're back to a revenue and monetization. Right. So how is that? Is there ad hoc programming in place for some of the vineyards for that, or how are people dealing with that?
Yeah, there's no ad hoc programming for lost revenue other than AgriStability in both vineyard and the winery situation, and both of them are impacted a bit differently. So the impact on the vineyard is going to be realized right away, very soon, because you lose your vines, you're not going to have a production. So that's going to be a loss right there. So the impact is going to be within that year. There's programs that they've been announced. There was a $70 million funding announced for replant of these vines. But then again, the availability of the wines and all that's going to make a difference when they have the right varieties that they can plant in there, and when they're going to be in production. So it could be 2 to 3 years before the vineyards can kind of get back to running at 70–80% of their total production. But it's totally different when it comes to wineries. I mean, it's first of all the losses that are kind of realized a bit later because they still have inventory from their prior years, which takes a year or two before that gets depleted. So the impact on the wineries is not realized until that inventory is gone. When you're looking at from figuring out what your gross reference margin loss is going to be for these programs to trigger in, but then it takes probably that much longer. Now you have 3 years you're waiting for the grapes to show up, then you have another year to two for the wine to be bottled and all that kind of stuff ready to be sold. So you're looking at probably a longer, like a 5 to 7 year impact on the wineries, which is much larger than the farms.
You got me concerned. I'm not gonna be able to get my BC wine here. There's
yeah, there's some, I mean, there would be BC wine, but some of it might not be BC BQA. So there's a lot of talks going on how they can, how they can still produce some BC wine, but it is quite complicated when it comes to the BC BQA and all that kind of stuff that's being worked on. One of the other things that I wanted to add, the complexity when it comes to the wineries, is the way the wineries are set up. They're usually, most of the time, they're set up as two separate operations. You have your vineyard, and then they have a second business, which is your winery operation. So when it comes to business risk management programs, they do work at a whole farm basis, but one of the guidelines is that they're supposed to be filing farm income. So if you have your business split up as your vineyard is your farm business and your winery is set up as a business entity and is filing a business income, then it becomes a bit more complicated. You're actually not eligible for the BRM programs under the current guidelines unless they go ahead and make the changes to those guidelines, or you change the nature of your business or how you report your income on it. So it's very important for people, for this. Right now they have late enrollment for 2023 and for 2024 to make sure they talk to their advisor that in order for them to get coverage for their wineries, which was confirmed at the conference in Penticton. They had a wine inside conference in Penticton where the Ministry of Agriculture folks were there, and the BRM representative said that we would be providing coverage all the way to the bottle. So, which is a very, very positive sign from the Ministry of Agriculture and from the Business Risk Management branch that they actually are going to cover value add piece on these wineries. Although the details are not out there, but it's important for the farmers to make sure they sign up for agri-stability, but also talk to their advisor to make sure they're actually filing the farm income when it comes to the taxes, not as business income, because if you're filing business income, you will not be eligible under the BRM programs under the current guidelines.
AJ, when I think of vineyards and wineries, and I've been to the Okanagan Valley many times and enjoy some of those tasting rooms, and it's fantastic if you really like wine. But I think there's different shapes and sizes. There's the large, very large corporate wineries, and then there are some smaller family mom and pop shops as well. Is that complicated too? Do you think, as the industry tries to talk to government provincially and federally, the fact that there is many shapes and sizes here? And I guess the other piece to that is, are we going to lose some wineries because of this multiple years of crop losses?
Yeah, I would be very surprised if we don't lose. There's definitely going to be some impacts that are going to be felt from this the last freeze that we've had. So definitely there would be some change to the number of wineries that we have. I think we have somewhere closer to 300 and some wineries throughout BC, and I definitely see there would be some of the wineries, the smaller ones, that may have to shift from their current situation. Like especially if they produce their own grapes and they've had an impact on their vineyard, and they have a land-based license. It's going to be problematic. So currently we have two different kind of wine licenses. We have commercial wineries, some of the larger wineries, and then we have the land-based wineries. So it further complicates the situation. If you produce 100% of your own grapes or majority of your own grapes and you turn them into wine, you're covered all the way through. But most wineries buy a certain percentage of grapes to make their wine because they can't grow all different varieties or whatever the reason is. And that's a number that is up for sort of discussion at this time as the business risk management unit is trying to figure out how they're going to get the coverage for provided a coverage all the way to the bottle, like what percentage of juice purchase or grape purchase off your farm would be allowed to get the coverage for that. And it further complicates the commercial wineries that if some of them don't produce their own grapes, that coverage from the ministry is being provided at a farm level. So they're not going to, through the same program, provide coverage if they've already provided coverage once at the vineyard level, and now you use that grapes to the wineries. So the commercial wineries are still looking at how they're going to be protected throughout of this. Yeah. So it's not, the impact is not just going to be on those smaller wineries that that we say smaller mama papa shops or boutique wineries, what you want to call it, but it's also going to have an impact on these large wineries that do produce a lot of good BCBQA wine or whatever, but they all purchase grapes. And so these programs at this time it's a bit unclear how they're going to provide coverage for them. So that's still up there in discussions.
Yeah, and what the long-term sustainability of agriculture in this area, like, which is high value crops, high value, right? High value land, high value production, but also it's been very, very clearly pronounced here in the past number of years, especially this past January, high risk as well, right? And so it does make you kind of question, what does this area look like long-term from an agricultural perspective?
Yeah. I mean, I'd always like to look at it as glass half full situation. So I think, this is an opportunity where the government is stepping up. They're providing large number of dollars. And when we're talking with on the association side of things, it might not be enough. There might be more support needed from the replant side of things, but we have an opportunity where we have at least the $70 million has been announced to help out with the replant. So I think this is an opportunity for the associations, for the government and the farmers to work together and to kind of, look at what is going to be site suitability, what's going to be the right varieties for the right region to grow, because we're probably going to be, with 50% we know for sure, the reports have been around the 54% of vines are dead, so they're going to need to be replanted. So I think it's an opportunity for us to look at to make sure that we're getting the right varieties in the right places, and we're trying to look at what the future is going to look like, because these weather phenomena are becoming more and more often. So we've been lucky for a number of years. We've been able to grow great vines in maybe some of the risky areas, and we've done the same on the cherry side of things. But I think this is an opportunity now for everybody to kind of step back and look and say, okay, we'll be looking at what the next 20 years looks like, and we make sure we're ready for that and be planting it accordingly.
Well, AJ, thanks so much for joining us here today. I really do appreciate it. And with all the risks in agriculture, and as it relates to some of the BRM programs and managing risk and things like that, I'm looking forward to having a lot of chats with you going forward. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Shaun. Looking forward to that.